philosophies which separate these two things can never survive in essence and in meaning. As Jesus, I'm talking of the general things, the result is that the bifurcation of religion leads to extremist forms and movements. Like in Islam, we notice the movement of Sufism. Sufism is almost exactly on the style of Pauline philosophy. And that also was a reaction to such extremists, observers of form, who observed form meticulously, that is the mullah, who said, if you say your prayer 5 times a day, that is what Islam is, no more. If you read the Quran, whether you understand the meaning or not, doesn't make any difference. Formally pay homage to God and He is happy with you. That's all what He requires. But the Sufi understood the danger of this teaching and said that if a religion does not bring your soul closer to God, and if it is only your body which is given a sort of exercise like PT, then such a religion is not worthy of following. So they separated. But they left the farm aside exactly like St. Paul did, with the result that they started moving away into the wilderness of no law. Practically, they lived in a sort of internal experience which was so misleading in many cases. The ecstasy they felt by thinking of God internally or thinking of their saints and others whom they respected, they did get some sort of exhilaration. And that is what they thought was the living experience of religion. So in reality, if you compare the Sufism with the Pauline philosophy concerning Jesus' message, then you come to realize that this is again a universal phenomenon which occurs everywhere in the world to every religion, only it is seldom recognized as clearly as it should be. So the image of Jesus as stands above all the prophets of God is born out of this misunderstanding. Jesus never broke away from the past. He never rejected even a jot of the Old Testament. When particularly confronted with this allegation, that do you reject the scriptures? He said, no. I have not come to change a jot of the book. I have come to perfect it, to fulfill it. Now this perfection is also, as I have studied, slightly mistranslated or misinterpreted. The word musaddiq is found in the Quran in exactly the same meaning. And according to the Quran, each prophet comes as a musaddiq of the previous ones and of the book, which means all the prophecies found in the books, until they are fulfilled and realized in the form of a promised reformer, they remain incomplete. So when Jesus said, I have come to complete the book, not to change a jot, it meant that the prophecies relating a revolutionary change in attitudes, this was to be brought about by the Messiah, remained incomplete until he had come. So as such, as we see from Islamic vantage point, there is no difference between him and other human prophets except that of changing the wrong attitudes of the people of his own religion to the one which stood in balance and which always could lead to God if you kept both form and spirit of the message equally well before you and practiced both as much as you possibly could. So I think, projecting myself into the minds of others, This is what I think must have happened to them. Again, there was another dilemma which they were facing early in Christian history, which also must have unfortunately led them away from the true Jesus, the living reality of history, to a Jesus which had to be created out of the compulsion of the times. By that I mean that the fact of crucifixion has a background. It has a background in the Old Testament. Why did the Jews so much insist on Jesus hanging by the cross? Has its roots in a biblical prophecy, whereby if a man attributes false things to God, which he had not said to him, and if such a man hangs by the tree, which means by the cross, and dies upon the tree, then his being an impostor is proved beyond a shadow of doubt. This was the conspiracy against Jesus. And the Holy Quran presents the whole conspiracy relating to both the ends of Jesus' life, the beginning as well as the death, or in whatever form he disappeared. According to the Holy Quran, it was a very heinous conspiracy against the person of Jesus Christ by his opponents of the time to present him to the people as a man with a false beginning, having an unchaste mother, having an illegitimate birth, and a false end. Both cursed. So it were two curses which they want to relate to Jesus, which hashed this conspiracy. So the Holy Quran has summed it up in this, is this, وَقَالِهِمْ عَلَى مَرْيَمَ بُهْتَانًا عَظِيمًا وَقَالِهِمْ إِنَّا قَتَلْنَا الْمَسِيحَ عِيسَى ابْنَ مَرْيَمَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. They said, the Holy Quran says, that the crime of the Jews of his time is twofold. First, they attributed to him an illegitimate birth by claiming that his mother was not chaste. So a false beginning. Then they claimed that they had succeeded in murdering him, and later on cross is also mentioned, which means that they also claim that they murdered him through crucifixion. God denies both these charges in the Quran and presents this as reason enough for returning the curse to his opponents, the Jews, who were hurling this curse upon Jesus. So the argument presented by the Quran is that that curse fell squarely upon those who had attributed this false allegation, this curse falsely to Jesus Christ. So now, what happened at the crucifixion? What happened was that the Roman law had condemned him to death, and that Roman law is still found in operation everywhere in the world in the same spirit. That is, once a person is condemned to death by hanging or by any other means, until he dies, the decision remains hanging over his head. If the first attempt fails, another attempt will have to be made until the purpose of that condemnation is fulfilled. The threat of death would continue to hang over such a person. Now, this is what is the most important thing in this relation, in this regard, which should be kept in mind. Then I'll connect these two things with the question you raised. Now, the dilemma of the Christians was that if they